What's going on, everybody? I hope you're enjoying your Tuesday morning so far. This is NYG Jeffy T85 here, and I'm going to talk about when is it the appropriate time for the New York Mets to start bringing up their young prospects? Because right now of the lack of offense at times that this New York Mets team has been displaying. Now, obviously the Mets have had a couple of impressive games offensively. But for the most part, this team has had trouble scoring runs. Case in point, yesterday's 10-0 loss, where the offense was shut down for only 3 hits, 2 of them alone by Luis Guillorme, and the Mets were shut out 10-0. And Carlos Carrasco, he had 2 solid first innings, and then he just got absolutely obliterated after that. And it didn't get much better towards the second half of that game. But what I keep hearing on the radio right now, and what I keep hearing from fans screaming, Escobar, Canha, Vogelbach, Navarez, all these guys aren't getting a job done. When are the kids coming up? When are the kids coming up? When are the kids coming up? Where's Baty? Where's Vientos? Where's Alvarez? Where's Mauricio? I, as a Mets fan, want to see these guys come up here too. I want to see these guys make their way to the main roster, make their way to the New York Mets. But the question is, when is it the appropriate time to finally call these kids up? You look at some players around the league. Jordan Walker of the St. Louis Cardinals. Anthony Volpe of the New York Yankees, to name a couple. They're younger than most of the players on the Mets. They're already called up. The Mets have the highest payroll. What are the Mets waiting for? Do they think that these kids are the answer? Do they believe that these kids, if they get called up to the Mets, are going to get the job done? Do they believe that these kids truly can make the impact that the fans believe? Or are the fans just being delusional right now in thinking that Baty, Alvarez, Vientos, Mauricio, that these kids, after what they did in spring training and what they did in Triple-A, are really going to be the answers, and they're going to ignite this team? And one point, I get why. Because the fact that you have young, exciting prospects that the Mets know are homegrown players that you can get behind as fans. But at the same time, these kids have been hitting spring training baseball and minor league baseball. It's a lot different from the majors. It's a lot different in an MLB season. But at the same time, when you are getting virtually nothing from the veteran players that you have on this roster that have really not gotten off to good starts at all. Canha had a great game the other night against the Marlins, but he's been off to a rough start hitting besides that one game. McNeil's been off to a tough start. Lindor's been off to a tough start. Nimmo has been up and down. Alonso has really not gotten the bat going. It's only 5 games. I get it. There's still plenty of time, and nobody should be jumping off the ledge when it comes to the New York Mets. You played 5 out of 162 games. But I get it. As a Mets fan, I know Mets fans jump off the ledge way too quickly, thinking the world is over, and that we automatically have to say, woe is me, and think that the kids are going to save the day. And you know what? Maybe they will. And it's not the worst thing in the world to call these kids up, get them up here, and see if they can ignite this fan base and get them excited. But at the same time, you cannot put that much pressure on some Triple-A kids that have not really gotten it done yet in the major leagues. You got to let these kids ease themselves in and see what kind of impact they can make. Maybe Brett Baty is the answer at third base going forward. Maybe Francisco Alvarez is the answer at catcher. Maybe Ronny Mauricio can find himself a position on this team. Same thing with Mark Vientos and be big-time bats for this lineup going into 2023 and beyond. But at the same time, We have to just not put so much pressure as Mets fans on these kids. Last night was bad. 10-0 against the Milwaukee Brewers. 10-0 loss. Was not good. A lot of it had to do with the pitching being miserable, but the hitting was not good either. Maybe it's just these guys are off to slow starts. And as fans, we all know we are fickle. We are going to boo the hell out of somebody and say they suck one day, and the next day we're like, oh, they're great. They're the best thing in the world. If they go out there and have 2 home runs in a game, or they go out there and hit a couple of doubles and drive in 3. We're fans. We're fickle. We understand. But that's the appropriate question right now when it comes to the New York Mets. When is it time to call up the kids? When is it time to call up their top prospects? When is it time to elevate Brett Baty, Mark Vientos, Ronny Mauricio, and Francisco Alvarez from the minor leagues to join the Mets? When is it time? How long of a leash is Billy Epler and Buck Showalter, and in a way Steve Cohen, going to give these veterans until they decide it's time to call up the kids? And if you're going to call up the kids, you are pulling the plug on a Vogelbach, you're pulling the plug on an Escobar, and you're even pulling the plug on a Navarez and a Nido. Because the second you call up Baty, he's your third baseman going forward. The second you call up Vientos, he's your designated hitter. The second you call up Mauricio, same thing, designated hitter. The second you call up Francisco Alvarez, he is your catcher. This cannot be this, we're going to play him sometime, then we're going to sit him. Then we're going to play him, then we're going to sit him. No. The second you call up those prospects and they are in that lineup, they are playing most of the time. You're going to put them out there and you're going to let them sink or swim on the Major League roster. This is the harsh reality you have to deal with. Because the Mets signed some of these guys to big deals. And if you really are saying, that's it, we need to bring up the kids from the minor leagues, you're pulling the plug on your veterans you have. Because you cannot have these guys play only 2 or 3 days a week. They have got to play 5 or maybe 6 days a week and get their feet under them and really see what kind of impact they can make with this Mets lineup. I understand the frustration with this Mets fan base. I get it. I get it. They see these other young players and they wonder, why are our kids not up? It's simple. Part of it has to do with the fact that you're paying some of these veterans the type of money that they're getting. And also, maybe they don't believe that these kids are ready yet to be called up to the major leagues because of what they might have had good spring trainings. But you're going up against other pitchers that are Triple-A pitchers, or some that might not even be in the major leagues or even minor leagues. It all really depends on what Billy Epler and Buck Showalter think is the best course of action. Do I think we're going to see these kids soon? Yes. Do I think that these kids are going to get called up soon? Absolutely. Especially if Eduardo Escobar, Daniel Vogelbach, Tommy Pham, Tim LeCastro, Omar Navarez, Mark Canha, Tomas Nido, if these guys struggle and continue to struggle, you are going to start seeing the kids getting called up to the major league roster. Plain and simple. Because of the fact that you can't just keep relying on veterans if they're not going to get the job done. You can't just keep out trotting veterans if they can't hit the ball consistently. This is going to be a monster decision for Billy Epler to decide. Because essentially it's a two-pronged decision. A, you're saying these veterans can't get it done anymore. It's time for a change. And B, You are pretty much getting ready. When you call up these players from the minors, they are going in the lineup and they are playing almost every day. Maybe a day or two off a week, but otherwise that they are in that lineup every single day. Because you're not going to sit a 21, 22, 23-year-old kid for a veteran half the time. You're going to play those kids. And you're going to let them go out there and sink or swim on the Major League roster. And not all these kids are going to work out. Unless you're the Houston Astros, most of the time, some of these kids are going to work out and some of them won't. Would not be shocked. Out of these 4 young kids, half of them don't work out. And half of them do. But it doesn't hurt to go get them out there and let's see what happens. Because right now you're not getting a lot from your veterans. And it's only been 5 games, so nobody needs to push the panic button yet. But at the same time, I get the fan base is frustrated. They want to inject some youth into this lineup. They want to inject some youth into this baseball team. They want to inject some life to the fan base. And what gets a fan base more excited than homegrown young players developed through the system? It's the same through the NBA. It's the same through the NFL. It's the same in the NHL. It's the same in any sport. You always get more excited with your homegrown talent because it's your talent. It's developed in your system. Your team drafted these players. Your team developed them. Your team displayed these young players in your minor leagues. So I get it. But when is the appropriate time? That is the biggest question. When is it the appropriate time to play these young players and bring them up for the minor leagues? That's the $1 million question. When is it time? That's a question that Billy Epler is trying to think. That's a question that Steve Cohen is pondering. Buck Showalter. Everybody involved in that New York Mets front office. When is it the appropriate time to finally start calling up these young players? Are you going to give these veterans a month? Are you going to give these veterans 2 months? Are you going to give these veterans 2 weeks? Are you going to give these veterans the rest of this week? I mean, that's the question right now. How long are you willing to give these veteran players until eventually you say enough is enough, it's time to call up the kids? That is the $1 million question right now when it comes to the New York Mets. That is what everybody wants to know right now with this baseball team. When is it time to call up their young players from the minor leagues? It's going to be a wait-and-see process. And we might get ourselves an answer soon enough. I'm waiting to see because I want to see some of these young players come up. But we'll see what's going to happen. But you guys let me know in the comment section. When is it appropriate for some of these kids to get called up to the Major League roster? Hit that like button if you haven't already. Give a sub to NYGJeffyT85. More news updates and chatter surrounding the New York Mets. Turn on the bell for notifications on the next video or short that's dropping on the channel surrounding the New York Mets. And you guys let me know in the comment section, when do you think is the right time for the New York Mets to call up their young prospects? And would you call them all up all at once? Or would you call them up one by one? And how do you think these kids are going to manage on the New York Mets Major League roster going forward? When eventually they do get called up, or are some of these kids going to be involved in trade talks and could be traded for a big-time player or a closer or another starting pitcher? Thank you very much, everybody. Have a great rest of your Tuesday. Take it easy, and let's go New York Mets. As always, all you got to do is you got to believe in those boys from Queens.